Title: The Last March of Sergeant Eleanor Brooks. You don't belong here. Old woman. This is for real veterans. The words weren't whispered. They were spat like venom from the young security guard's mouth. His stance rigid with false authority. He didn't look up from his clipboard. Didn't see the tremor in her hands, or the way her thin shoulders shook not from fear, but from cold, from age, from the unkindness of a world that had long stopped caring. The people nearby pretended not to hear. A few shifted awkwardly. One or two smirked. No one intervened. The old woman didn't argue, didn't raise her voice or try to fight back. She just gave a quiet nod, turned from the entrance of the National Veterans Hall, and stepped back into the biting December wind. Her frail form swallowed by the gray morning light. In her hands, she clutched a folded flag so tightly it trembled. Her name was Eleanor Brooks. And just minutes later, she would become a name the entire nation would remember. Eleanor had circled this date on her calendar with the kind of reverence most people reserved for birthdays or anniversaries. December 7th. Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. The one day a year when no fanfare needed, just a sincere acknowledgement. Eleanor was 87 now. She no longer drove. Her bones ached with every step. Her vision, once sharp enough to spot a sniper's glint in the brush, now blurred at the edges. But her memory was sharp enough to remember every jungle, every river, every name of the men and women who never came home. She'd been 17 when she lied about her age and joined the Women's Army Corps. By the time she turned 20, she was on the front lines of the Korean Peninsula, a field nurse with a spine made of steel. Vietnam followed, and with it, unspeakable losses. But Eleanor had stayed, fought, saved lives, buried friends. This morning, she'd woken before dawn. She'd polished her boots the way she was taught decades ago, pressed her old army jacket with the bronze star pinned over her heart. She'd refused her granddaughter's offer to drive her. This journey wasn't for company. It was for remembrance. The museum was breathtaking white marble columns, flags rippling in the wind, wide stairs like a tribute in stone. Eleanor had stood there for a moment, soaking it in. She hadn't been inside in years, not since her brother's photograph was added to the memorial wall. There had been a line at the door, mostly young families, some veterans in freshly pressed uniforms. Eleanor had waited her turn patiently, holding that folded flag with both hands. When she reached the front, she smiled at the guard. "Good morning, son. ID?" the guard asked, barely glancing up. "I served in Korea and Vietnam," she said softly. "Medical Division, 21st Infantry in Korea, 5th Evacuation Hospital in Nam." "Ma'am," he sighed, finally meeting her gaze. "We need military ID, VA card, or discharge papers. No exceptions. I don't have those anymore," she admitted. "But I brought this." She opened her jacket and pulled from her bag a carefully preserved photograph, black and white, creased at the corners off her standing shoulder to shoulder with her unit in Korea. The guard barely looked at it. "That could be anybody. I'm sorry. You'll have to step aside." She did, quietly, dignified. A woman behind her, draped in designer wool and pearls, murmured, "These homeless folks will do anything for a freebie." Others chuckled. Eleanor didn't say a word. She descended the stairs slowly, her body cold, but her pride intact. She found a bench a few yards away and sat, waiting for the next bus, for the cold to pass, for something. She didn't notice the woman standing across the street, tall, confident, professionally dressed. She'd watched the whole exchange, and she was already dialing. Lieutenant Colonel Renee Marshall didn't tolerate disrespect. A graduate of the Air Force Academy with 22 years of service and more medals than she ever wore at once. She had been at the museum on invitation. She wasn't in uniform, but she was still very much on duty in her mind. Always. By the time she reached the top floor of the Pentagon's Eastern Wing, she was already furious. She didn't knock. She didn't need to. "General Monroe," she said, standing at attention in front of the desk. There's something you need to see. 4-star General Thomas Monroe, commander of the Joint Chiefs, looked up from his morning briefing. She's outside the Veterans Hall right now? Sir. They turned her away. Why? No ID. The guard refused to listen. Disrespected her. And I ran her name. She placed the file on his desk. Eleanor May Brooks. Field medic. Korean War. Frontline trauma nurse. Vietnam. Multiple commendations. Bronze Star. 2 Purple Hearts. General Monroe stared at the name for a long moment. Brooks? He murmured. Eleanor Brooks? He stood so fast his chair toppled. Clear my morning. Prep the motorcade. I want an honor guard assembled within the hour. Tell them to break out the full dress uniforms. Sir? Marshall blinked. She carried my father out of a burning medical truck during Operation Ripcord. Monroe said, voice low. He bled out in her lap. She held his hand while he died. She wrote my mother to say he didn't die alone. By the time Monroe's convoy reached the museum steps, the crowd was mid-ceremony. The director was giving some speech about legacy and valor. Cameras flashed. A school choir sang in the background. And Eleanor Brooks was still outside, waiting for a bus that never seemed to come. General Monroe didn't walk. He marched. His boots cracked against the marble like cannon fire. The young security guard looked up. His face turned ghostly pale. Monroe didn't wait for introductions. Where is she? He barked. Sir, I don't know. The woman you turned away. The veteran. She didn't have ID. Sir, you told her she didn't belong. That she wasn't a real veteran. That's what I was told. Is that what you said? The museum director rushed over. General Monroe. What a surprise. We didn't know you'd be. Monroe cut him off. You stood in front of cameras giving flowery speeches about honoring heroes while your staff humiliated one outside your doors. A real one. A legend. Surely it's just a misunderstanding. Do you know what war medals look like after 60 years? Monroe thundered. Do you know what trauma does to a person's paperwork? Do you understand the kind of courage it takes for a woman to walk up those steps alone? Decades after the world forgot her? Silence. Eleanor Brooks. He continued, voice rising, is a combat veteran with more experience in hell than half your board has in a luxury office. And you sent her away. The crowd had stopped pretending not to listen. Phones were up. News crews turned their cameras. Monroe took a breath, then looked at his aide. Find her. Across the plaza. Eleanor still sat. The flag clutched in her lap. The air had grown colder. She hadn't eaten since before dawn. The snow was beginning to fall. She didn't hear the footsteps at first. Then the sound registered sharp. Military. She looked up, blinking snowflakes from her eyes. Miss Brooks, a young man said, saluting with crisp precision. General Monroe requests your presence. She blinked. General who? But she stood. Let him help her up. Let herself be guided across the plaza. Up the steps. By the time she reached the top, a crowd had gathered. Faces she didn't recognize. Uniforms from every branch. And at the top, a man with 4 silver stars. Monroe stepped forward and saluted. Master Sergeant Eleanor Brooks, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I'm Thomas Monroe. My father was Corporal David Monroe, 21st Infantry. He died in your care. Eleanor's breath caught. Her mouth opened, closed. Then slowly, a soft smile spread across her face. He called you Tommy in the letter. She whispered, you were 4. He nodded. I remember. She said. I held his hand. A silence fell like reverence. And then, as if on cue, the assembled officers came to attention. One by one, salutes rose around her. The crowd followed. Civilians placing hands over hearts. Tears rolling silently. For the first time in years, Eleanor stood straight. No more trembling. No more shame. She was not a frail woman. She was a warrior. She turned to Monroe. handed him the flag. For the ones who didn't come home, she said. He received it as though it were holy. And Eleanor Brooks walked up the stairs she'd once been barred from. Not as a guest, but as a returning soldier. A story no one would ever again forget.